Hello, how are you? Today I am going to talk to you about benthic macroinvertebrates. So that's kind of a mouthful. I'm talking about aquatic insects and macroinvertebrates. So macro is big enough that we can see it with our eye without a microscope. And invertebrates mean they don't have a spine. All right, so this is the crane fly, and it shows you two pictures. It shows what it looks like in its aquatic stage when it's in the water and it's a larva, and then it shows you what it looks like as an adult. So these are those big insects that a lot of people call mosquito eaters. They're really large. They look like a huge mosquito, and they're crane fly. The mayfly is another one that you might recognize, the adult. And then this is what the aquatic stage looks like of the mayfly. So I love looking for macroinvertebrates. I think it's really fun, a great activity to get outside, check out a creek in your backyard or a small pond near your house. If you have a small net, that is great. If you don't have a small net, that's fine. If you have a little yogurt container that you could use or a small container that you can use to scoop, that is really helpful. I've caught a lot of things without a net before. So get an adult, and water shoes are good, or old sneakers to walk in creeks that are rocky, and I'll show you some things you can maybe find by you. All right, there's an adult dragonfly on this rock here. We'll see if we can find any dragonfly nymph in the water. Okay, so I was not able to find any dragonfly nymphs today where I was, but I want to show you this because they are really cool looking. They still have the dragonfly nymphs that live in the water. They have the same big eyes that the adult dragonflies have, so that's a real good way to kind of tell them apart. And they can live in the water for a couple of years before they emerge as adults. So they have a really neat life cycle. The adult lays the egg on the edge of the water or on a plant in the water, and then these hatch out and they actually molt a couple of times and get a little bit bigger each time. And then when they emerge the last time, they're adults and they have wings, and then they climb out and they let those dry out, and then they can fly. So these are pretty neat. They're also a really hungry macroinvertebrate, a big predator macroinvertebrate. They have huge mouth parts, and they will stalk other aquatic insects and even tiny fish for their food. I'll flip them over. But it's sometimes neat to just watch these little critters swim around. And so you can see the gills on the back of its tail, just kind of pumping. We have some little beetles in here also. So there's one of the little aquatic beetles, another aquatic beetle. Okay, so here are a stonefly and a mayfly. They look very similar, especially if you're just starting to look at macroinvertebrates, but there are some differences. So the stonefly will have two tails coming off of their abdomen. The mayfly may have two tails, but most often they have three tails. So if you find one that you think might be a stonefly, you want to look. Two tails, and then this is their abdomen right here. And it's actually very smooth. Whereas the mayfly, on their abdomen, they have external gills there, and they're feathery in the water. They kind of flutter. And so that is a way to tell it apart. When you have them in a container, it's kind of neat to see how they move. But you do want to add a couple small rocks just so they feel comfortable and they can find a spot to hide if they want. Alright, so these little casings right here are actually little caddisfly larvae, and they make those little stems, those little things. This little guy crawling around here is a little beetle larva. You can see him moving, so we're going to get him back into the water since that's where we found them. But you can see him crawling around Okay, so those caddisfly larvae that we saw, I'm going to just show you a picture quick. So this is a little case that it built. So the caddisflies, some of them are in a case and some of them don't make cases. They're just kind of free in the water and they might hide under a rock. But the ones that build those little cases, it's like a mini mobile home. And they can either build them with small pebbles, so it just looks like a miniature little tiny chimney almost, a cobblestone chimney around their body. Their saliva is sticky, and so all of the little pebbles, they stick onto their bodies to make that casing. Or this one, sometimes they build them with little tiny pieces of stick. And so if you see one of those in the water, the ones I showed you had attached to a rock, but sometimes you might just see their front feet sticking out of these little houses that they make. And they just kind of walk along the bottom of a creek or a pond.
All right, so if you are lucky, you can sometimes find a fast-moving macroinvertebrate, a crayfish. So I have a crayfish here. Like I said before, you want to make sure you're putting in some of their natural habitat if you're gonna keep them for a couple minutes. So I put a little rock in here and I'll just move it so you can see him better. So you have to be patient, and these guys, when they're scared, actually swim backwards.
All right, another interesting thing about macroinvertebrates is that scientists do use them to determine water quality of that particular creek or stream. So some macroinvertebrates can handle living in polluted water while others can't. So these ones right here, we have our caddisfly, our stonefly, and our mayfly. And they don't do as well in polluted water, so they need clean water. So if you're finding a lot of them in the water, that's a really good indicator. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you learned some new macroinvertebrates and that you have a spot that you can go and check out and find some of these macroinvertebrates. I definitely recommend getting a guide. There are a bunch that you can find online and they're fairly simple to use. It helps to look at the pictures of what you have and compare it to what you find on the chart. So I will put some links to a few different guides and then you can print one off or bring your phone with you and check out what you found. So if you're not interested in figuring out exactly which macroinvertebrates you found, that's fine. Then just go out and explore and have fun. And if you would send me some pictures of what you found or the creek that you went to explore, I would love that. All right, thanks for checking this out, and I'll catch you next time.